Uh, we're here for the Mortal Kombat Mortal Kombat panel. So I've got a slightly for free. Right? So I've got a bit of confession to make. I have to say that Mortal Kombat can't pass me by. I was of a certain age. I started deeply into. As you guys probably, of course, Daniel. At all of 10 minutes on PowerPoint. So we on the bottom. Mortal Kombat franchises. Who said video games were dead in the early 90s?
Yeah, we're not seeing any of that 1.8 billion either.
Talking about Mortal Kombat, I think we need to go back a few years if we can. And Warren, I think we're going to turn to you first. WTARG, can you tell us what WTARG is, or is it WTARG?
It is WTARG,
Okay.
yes. Not that anybody would know that, because it could just as easily be WTARG, but WTARG sounding more like a Star Wars character or something from Harry Potter. But I think that would be W apostrophe TARG, WTARG. Anyway. WTARG is what I called the software I created to do video digitizing in the late 1980s. I started at Williams in 1986. I think it was 1986, and the video department at that time was completely decimated. The crash in the arcade industry out games, and I kind of was hired as they sort of sensed, I think, that the arcade industry was sort of coming back and recovering. So they were investing in more people. And I came in the middle of the development of Joust 2 and helped to complete that project when the original programmer was fired. But after that, after Joust 2 was out the door, we started looking at making a new system, a new hardware system, because the Joust hardware was the older kind with the 16 colors. And the future was that memory was cheaper, CPUs were faster, and we were all saying the next step is 256 colors. So having a palette of 256 colors available for a game meant that you could do more things that might be a little more photorealistic. And around this time, Amiga, the Amiga computer was out, and somebody was making a video digitizer for the Amiga, which meant you could point a video camera at something, some live subject, and you would get a digital video image of that subject. It was very clunky, it was slow, they were still images, but what I saw was the potential, as the memory got faster and cheaper, as the processors got faster, we would be able to grab frames from a live video source and digitize them, and that's where I felt it was going to go. And I was right, it just took years. But at that point, I started making software, not this software, WTARG later, because WTARG would have, it took a couple of years. The Amiga obviously was good for experimentation, but it was not good for our practical purposes. But then Targa, the Targa board came out, which had video digitization, was a little faster, and it had a software development kit. What that means, it had hooks, or ways that I could basically write my own software to hook into their hardware to make that board do what I wanted it to do. And so I wrote this WTARG. And as we got the system that we were working on got scrapped. Eugene Jarvis came back to Williams. He was not there when I started, but he came back and he threw out the plans for our 256 color system and said, no, I want to do this. So we went a different direction, but we eventually developed a 256 color system, and I wrote the display system, Eugene wrote the operating system, and then we both separated and started working on different games. And Eugene, Jack Hager, George Petro worked on NARC, what would become NARC. I was paired graphics called USSA. USSA was canceled. NARC was not. NARC was released. And here's NARC. It's the first game to use digitized graphics. And that, by the way, that the bad guy in the trench coat is Mark Lafredo, our hardware. And there's an interesting reason for that. So in the original version of WTARG, again, it was very slow. We could not grab frames in real time. So what we had to do is we had to videotape whatever action we wanted, and then we would have to pause the videotape and grab a single frame, and then strip out the background until only the subject, the character, was left. That was a very laborious process. That was a terribly horrible, laborious process. And because we only had a total palette of 256 colors, so it didn't really look that digitalness of the original system and the limitations of it and what the artist did. So NARC, really doesn't have that digitized look like other games. But it, things like this, And again, very much artist cleaned up.
And then you left Williams.
The game I'd been working on was canceled. They basically wanted me to work on a football game, but I had no interest in that. So I left Williams, and things moved on without me. I went on to make a game called Exterminator for Premier Technology, also using digitization technology. But I was actually called back to Williams in 1991 because a programmer had left in the middle of the development of Terminator 2. And they came back, started working on Terminator. And they were using the same old system, the same old methods. Now maybe they had gotten a little bit better at it and they had cleaned things up. But generally, they were doing the same old stuff. And I was stunned, and I said, all right, well, I'm going to take it upon myself to continue to develop it. And so then it started, coming to its own.
And so is this an improved version of WTAR compared to, or is it fundamentally the same system?
I think for T2 is essentially the same system. I think the artists got better at using it,
okay.
And the artists sort of got familiar with what it should look like. It's possible that at some point we started to increase the number of palettes that we had a big difference.
Great.
Mortal Kombat 1, the first Mortal Kombat, was using the original WTAR.
Interesting. And so, Daniel, so thanks for your patience there, Daniel. So, Daniel, whilst on
Interesting.
what was Daniel Pesina doing during this time? 86, 87.
Like outside martial arts turned like in a more traditional way. So at that time, I got the opportunity in 1986 to train in China for 3 months.
Okay. So bringing us up to the conception of Mortal Kombat. So as I understand it, you received a phone call from a friend of yours.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, my brother is who we see right there is my brother Rayton. Got heavily into art, to drawing, and him and a couple of friends would come over to my parents' home or to their homes to draw art together. So one of those guys was John Tobias, and later on when he was attending college, he had this bright idea he wanted to be a director. And so he got us together with a high camera, and we tried to film kung fu movies. Like me and my brother were kung fu movies against each other, and he would be recording them with a high camera that his dad owned. So later on, received a phone call, and he was like, "Hey, remember when we used to shoot those movies?" And I was like, "Yeah, that was kind of cool." And he's like, "I work for a game company, and I have an idea for a game. Will you help me? Will you help me? I want it to be live action. Will you come into the studio and film some moves, and then I'm going to draw some sketches, and I'm going to take this, to basically what you told me, storage area, what I thought was a storage area, which was really they used as a film studio, but there were desks and chairs and lamps in there, and we found a place and we put together some fight sets. And so they took that and then John's drawings and approached someone at the Midway Games with that.
Okay. And in my reading, what's this guy got to do with the story? So this is Mr. Van Damme, right? How is he related to?
Yeah, at the time, as what I was told was when John began to spread his idea of the game, a different idea came up to have a mainstream fighting game, not this fantasy game, because they thought it wouldn't sell too much, to have Jean-Claude Van Damme star in a fighting game which really at that time was two different projects. But I know a lot of people mix it up, and it's 25 years ago. But at that time, I was kind of sad about that because I had some ideas that I gave John about the game, and I was like, crap, they're going to give those ideas to Jean-Claude Van Damme. You know, originally I was heavily into Chinese martial arts from training in China, and one of the legends was the Lin Kuei. And I was like, John, if we do this video game, you have to change the Japanese ninjas into Chinese Lin Kuei ninjas and try to use the Lin Kuei legend. So, you know, I showed him the book that he could pull references and stuff like that. So that was part of it. And then they were going to give it to this guy, Jean-Claude Van Damme, who I'm a fan of. I pay for his movies. I still pay for his movies. So I'm a big fan. And then they decided, like at that time, they were going to go with a game with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and our original version of what would later on be called Mortal Kombat was canceled.
But that'll fell through. So you mentioned the process of going to literally a warehouse, to clear out a storage area, set up, this is what I assume is the WTARG system, or part of it, right?
Yeah, well, the WTARG system is software and hardware. It's basically a target board in a PC with a video camera connected to it running my software. That's what WTARG was. And the thing that WTARG would do is it would allow, you know, we would grab backwards, forwards. It obviously, you know, we could talk later about videotape, and then, like I said, freeze frame every frame that they wanted, strip it out manually. Was very clunky. This is the way, or two wasn't out the door. Large character at, you know, 32 pixel size or something, you know, you lose a lot of detail. Anyway, I just thought they did a great job of using WTARG for it.
And Daniel, what the process we see here, from what I read, it was a pretty actual process of being there and doing this.
Yeah, so what you saw at the beginning of the way to finish an opponent, so I thought that it would be cool if I jumped up in the air. So I would call the first day filming, 10 hours, John put me in front of a wall, and we just recorded movement like the whole day with no direction. So I just did martial art move after martial art move after martial art move. We took a look at the video, and he's like, okay, tomorrow we're going to organize it. We need to have high, medium, and low. So we came in the next day, we organized it more. He looked at it and he said, guess what? You can't be moving around a lot when you do it. And I was like, okay, we got to mark the floor. So at the beginning, I put little stirrups in the place, little squares in the place. And then we did the filming. And then after close to the end of that day, John was like, well, sometimes the shade of your face, because the lighting was limited, was different. So then I squared off a place. I was like, okay. So he looked at through the camera, and then he would be like, I would inch forward, and they'd be like, right there. So we marked the floor there, and then inch backward, and right there. And so we made a little box. And so we filmed the day, and the next day when we came in, somebody removed the tape for that stuff and where the camera would go. So then we had to start again from the whole beginning. So we did we had about 5 or 6 days of 8 to 10 hour days, even before we finally got something that we're like, okay, come on, let's try to get a programmer in here and try to figure out how to actually use the movement using the hitboxes. So yeah, it was, and two, I did jumping on concrete at the beginning, I did falls on the concrete at the beginning. Later on, John told me, oh, we have a mat, but you look comfortable, because I did judo for a long time. And so you look comfortable falling.
In terms of, and forgive me for not being a martial artist of any description at all, but how authentic are the moves that we see in Mortal Kombat, or how relatable are the bulk of the moves within Mortal Kombat to what one would consider as authentic martial arts?
Yeah, in the first game, we really tried to pay attention to, we did it slow, and we made sure that each character had something, would kick a little bit different than the next character. So we tried to make, have like a complete personality, even though we didn't have names for the characters. We just started saying, oh, this guy is this, and we just started, the people who won't, but that wasn't, I was thinking.
And in terms of, you mentioned the development of the individual characters. It sounds to me like it was a very organic process, and this stuff wasn't written out So this is Scorpion. This is what he looks like. These are the moves he does. You need to do these moves. It was very much on the fly, and you were building and creating these.
Yeah. John was like, okay, I want you to come out and do a fighting stance, and then I was like, well, he's a movie star. He should be a little cocky, so I playing fans. And then John was like, you know what? Come out 3 times, do that, and then change it. So I would do a punch 3 times, and then I do it this way 3 times, this way 3 times, and then I cock back and try to just. So the whole process was, it's very slow, and there were days to figure out what we're doing.
And in terms of choosing the other people, as we can see, there's somebody to decide who they should bring in.
At the time, an idea, and we just would build on it. And the lead was. I was like, okay, this Scorpion, I want you to. And I looked at John, like, I'm not going to do that. And he's like, why not? And I'm like, well, I was like, don't be an asshole. Remove the mask. And then Rich looked at most his skeleton. And then John, John is like, oh, a flaming skeleton. So that's how the process. A lot of the process started was like, somebody being a smartass, or just somebody having one idea, and then we just steamrolled idea after idea, like goofing around. We were goofing around, and Carlos was doing a particular move, and then Rich jumps out dressed as Kano, and he's like, what if there's a secret character where you have to fight 2 people at once? So right around. So, but that idea stepped later on we would use it. We would film 2 more characters, and then we would use that to film to come up with Reptile.
Okay. And Warren, to bring you back in, at what point did you?
And that was really Ed Boon and John Device. They were the team. They were working with some artists, John Vogel and a couple of other guys. I really wasn't involved. I was working on T2, but I did start working on thrift stores and any place you could cut out a piece of cardboard and rubber or plastic, just putting these
$15 less than the adult size equivalent. So it was like
of Goro. Track mode and the title of the game on top of it. Well, I didn't have that memory. So he came to me and said, listen, I know you're playing around with compression algorithms, which are software, and poof, the image was in there. Months later, when Mortal Kombat was out, but I was just happy.
Can you talk a little about one of the things which Mortal Kombat is, of course, most famous for, and those are the spectacular fatalities which made that game so unique. So was that really just an extension of this crazy cooking pot?
The horn after the bull was dead. I mean, the guy is crazy, and he used to punch boulders, so his hands were like all deformed and that. But I was like, oh, that would be cool if I would just punch some guy's head off, kind of in that.
That would be cool.
Yeah. Well, then John was like, okay, let's film that. So we filmed it, and that became the first fatality.
Okay.
And then after that, everybody was the next one to be filmed, and he wanted to take out the heart, but they never filmed it. It continued.
How quaint. I suppose we should address the elephant in the room, and that's one of the.
That there's a similarity in the actors go into guys. Like for a commercial, there's a real gray area where sometimes people are used, I guess, as a word to add artistically to a product, but they're not technically on the staff, and it's a gray area. It's an unfortunate thing,
And so Mortal Kombat 1 comes out. Cabinets are built, presumably more than 200 in the end, Daniel. And then a decision is made that actually the sequel needs to be done, Mortal Kombat 2. Warren, the difference is now in the WTOG system. For Mortal Kombat 2, is there a distinct improvement in the graphic quality?
I've got to be honest with you, I don't remember exactly when. I don't remember the timeline of the lines on the floor. It all colored chroma key blue, and we would try to, chroma key things. At the San Diego Comic-Con, it was a year ago or 2 years ago, and John Tobias was there, Sal DeVita, Ed Boon, Mark Jamel, a lot of these guys were there, and Sal was saying that they still, even with the chroma key, they had problems with bleed because it was video. So if they used a videotape, if they ever videotaped something and then tried to strip it out later, they had to correct for the bleed. It's just that blue would bleed into the image. Hardware.